Welcome to Bloom. Today, my guest is Sofia Loureiro, and I hope I pronounced that correctly. She lives in Portugal, and I'm really excited about this conversation because I already had a reading with her cards, and I thought it was really fascinating. So I'm really glad to introduce that to my audience. Sofia is a natural health practitioner and a mentor and guide for highly sensitive people. And she has two published books. And I think what's also important here to mention is that you used to be a scientist. You were a scientific researcher in marine ecology before you, if I understood correctly, you had a burnout and then you started to shift into natural health and being a natural health practitioner and finding your intuition. So I'll just hand it over to you now to share whatever you want to share about your path at the beginning of this conversation.
Okay, so hello and thank you very much for having me in your podcast, Bloom, which I love. Some episodes are really very interesting and speak to myself and my intuitive being. I love the one that it was with your friend. It's not who, and I really felt that episode also. And okay, about my past, I was a scientific research also in the field of human genetics and cancer to be more specific. And then I changed to environmental chemistry and then finally to marine ecology. And then when I came back to Portugal in 2010, while I was doing the research in Barcelona of marine ecology, I started to study at night naturopathy, and eventually I did a master in naturopathy. And so, when I came back to Portugal in 2010, I followed this career and I gave up the scientific researcher career because I always wanted, to help the persons in a more direct way and to connect with persons. And, I felt that I wanted to change the way I was doing that. I mean, in scientific research, for sure, we also help the world, but I wanted to have a better, more direct connection with the people. And so I started with the as a natural health practitioner, and following that path, then I published two guides of natural remedies for children and also for women with Penguin Random House here in Portugal, which
Mhm.
was eventually also translated to Spain and published in Brazil, and also two planners of personal development of 2019 and 2020. And then finally in 2020, I changed again area for the high sensitivity world.
Mm. And so you changed one form of writing for another form of writing, one form of research for another form of research, right? So your curiosity was still there, but in a different way.
Well, that's a very good word, Jole, because in fact, curiosity, I do think that it's one of my major, characteristics or quality or virtue,
Mhm.
because my mind was made to research. So it doesn't matter really the field of research, because then when I started, I changed from all these things already in scientific research, three different areas. Then when I started in naturopathy and, natural health, I had to research a lot to publish these two books. And then I started to research, the personal growth world to publish those planners. And then in 2020, I did the certification training in highly sensitive person. And also, I'm listed as a therapist in Dr. Elaine Aaron's list for Portugal.
Mhm.
And then I started to research again, and now completely in a completely different field, which was like, emotional intelligence, mindfulness, positive psychology, intuition, neuroscience. I don't know if I already told. So again, it's like I'm 55 now, so I think that I know myself enough to know that curiosity is one of the things that that keeps me going forward, and which is great because curiosity is one of the qualities of mindfulness, of being present, being at the present moment, so that was very helpful, really.
Yes, yes, I bet. I think it's the salt in life, without curiosity, most sensitive people, they just shrivel up. We can't survive. It's like oxygen for us. I'd like to just for a moment go back because it's something we share. In my past, I was also a biologist. That's how I started out. And many times, and I did many different things, just like you. And many times, people said, "What does one have to do with the other?" And I think that is something sensitive people that love complexity and see connections. That's a question that confuses us. At least it used to confuse me because it was the same kind of desire to understand nature, and I see human beings as part of nature. And whether I was doing that as a biologist to understand the environment human beings live in and that we need to take care of that environment, or it was through dance or theater or anthropology, was to me it was all the same. So can you describe for yourself a bit whether there is a connection for you and how you would describe how you segued from one to the other? What happened inside for you? I mean, why did you start with marine biology or with genetics to begin with, and then made your path to where you are now? What's the internal path?
Well, the internal path, I think it's different for all of us, but when we look back, it makes a lot of sense. It doesn't make sense for the other persons because they think, that life should be a career in a straight line, but life isn't like that, really. Things happen to us. So I started with human genetics because, in fact, my bachelor was in applied chemistry with specialization in biotechnology. And after 2 months, I was 22. I was already starting a project in the natural health, in the Health Institute in Portugal, Ricardo Jorge, of human genetics. And it was two programs. It was one called neuroblastoma, which is a pediatric cancer, and the other, it was the colorectal cancer also. So I was like 22 years old, 2 months, a newbie, and starting already with this, with a fellowship from the League Against Cancer, the Portuguese League Against Cancer. But I have to tell, it was very difficult for me, especially the pediatric cancer, because, we would receive small samples of tumors from children for me to take the DNA, and because I was in charge of putting better the protocol to detect at which stage the cancer was at. So although it was small samples of, tumors, I would still have the form from the person and this case of the child. And it's really, sometimes it was babies. And that, as I'm sensitive, it started really to be hard for me. I know that I was helping, and this would help, the other children to know at which stage the cancer was, so that you refine the treatment. But for me, it was really heartbreaking. Each time I would get a new sample.
Yeah.
And meanwhile, life happens again, and an ex-boyfriend of mine died when I was in the middle of, this project. After 6 months, he died, and I was young and he was young. I was, like I told you, 22, maybe 23 already. And this made me, reframe my whole life and thinking, if I die tomorrow, have I really lived what I wanted to live? So I gave up everything. After this 1 year, I finished the 1 year of the fellowship and I started to hitchhike all over Europe. Just doing completely different things, nothing to do with science at all, since, selling magazines for the homeless in Paris to working in a fish factory in Scotland or a restaurant in Berlin, whatever, the adventure, because I'm also a high sensation seeker. I
Mm.
also identify myself as a high sensation seeker. So I need the safety of the high sensitivity, but I need the new experience of the high sensation
Mhm.
seeker, so that my nervous system is balanced. So I don't go either in hypoactivation and getting, this emptiness in life, or hyperactivation because I don't feel safety and I get anxious. So it's like this fine tuning of the nervous system. And then when I had this nomad life, then I came back to Portugal one time and I just applied for a fellowship, for a PhD fellowship. And to my surprise, I got it, because I wasn't thinking that I would, but as I had very much good grades at
Mhm.
university and so on, I did get the fellowship. And so at this time, I opted for, I didn't want anymore to work in genetics. And I was very concerned always about environment. So I did this PhD in environmental chemistry.
Mhm.
But then as a post PhD, and I went, at this time, I went to Antarctic and I did oceanographic expeditions, and it was, amazing, the things I've done. But then as a post PhD, I was also very passionate about the marine life, because I was born by the sea. So, I was seeing myself saving the whales and stuff like that, but it's not exactly like this when you really do research. Well, some of the people do get to do these kind of works, which are amazing. But, well, I had a lot of lab research, and you end up in front of a computer with a lot of specific programs of statistics and so on, and publishing scientific papers in peer-reviewed magazines and all of that. Really, I started to feel I wanted to help persons in a more direct way. So, Jole, if you are to ask me what is the common thread, I will tell you: helping,
Mhm.
being of service. That's the common thread. I went to genetics and human genetics because I wanted to help.
Mhm.
Then, as it was, like I told you, hard for me, then I sought environmental, because I'm also very environmental friendly. I wanted also to help. Then I went to, marine ecology because I wanted to help. And then I went to natural health practitioner because I wanted to help. And then I went
Yes.
to
Yes.
high sensitivity because I wanted to help, and to empower sensitive people, because maybe it's selfish of me, but I think that the world definitely needs so much sensitivity and compassion. And let's face it, I can't do it all myself. So if I empower sensitive people, they can go there out to the world, get out of the shadows of their anxieties, burnout, thinking that there's something wrong with me, low self-esteem, all not setting boundaries because they don't know how to do it or feel guilty. And so I thought, you know what? If I empower sensitive people, that they can put their word into the world, oh God, I feel so accomplished. And it's such, an honor, to my clients, because I have clients from every walks of life, since young to older people, men, women, and some of them CEOs, and some of them artists and musicians. And just to see people bloom, which is a very good name for your
Yes.
podcast, by the way, bloom, to watch people bloom, my God, is
Yes.
amazing. And it's an honor. So the common thread was always, for one side, my curiosity to learn, to learn, to learn. And after, there's a second wing of it, which is to share, to share what I've learned, so that I'm helpful and I can empower persons. I think that's it.
Yeah, there's so much there. Thank you, Sophia. So It is so interesting how similar in the way our paths are, because I used to work in stem cell transplantation center, and there were lots of very, very sick people. And after a year, I did it as an internship. I stopped doing it because it was just too much, too much to carry. So I can really relate to that. What I also really like is you bring two important words here, and it talks to that spectrum of high sensitivity that I think is very important to understand. And I write about that as well, and I have some information on that on my homepage about you have, apart from being sensitive, you have other aspects that are really important in shaping how you move in the world, how you express yourself, or how you express or live your sensitivity. So you mentioned the high sensation seeking aspect, which sometimes, people get confused. They say sensitives are introverts, and many of us are, but you can be introvert and at the same time be a high attention seeking person, which, some of us don't have it easy with that because we have so many different aspects. And then the other aspect you mentioned is that being, having being multi-talented. Yeah, to be very intellectual, because in order to write research papers and a PhD, you need to be very organized, and you need to have that scientific way of thinking. And at the same time, you have this immense intuition. And what I really like about you is that you merged so many of these aspects into what your mission is now, right? So I don't like the word scanner personality, but I just want to mention it here for the audience. I prefer to say multi-talented, because that, to me, is a lot more positive and reflects a lot more how I see myself and how, you possibly see yourself. So I would like to, just for a brief moment, return to that burnout experience that you described to me. So could you just briefly say, because you've mentioned it a little bit, but I'd like to go a little bit deeper, that moment where something in you said, I need to shift. I just need to do it differently.
Well, again, it was the flow of life, so burnouts were just like my middle name, I think, because I mean, when I was doing scientific research at Barcelona in marine ecology, at the same time I was studying at night naturopathy, homeopathy, Tai Chi, auricular acupuncture, Feng Shui, really. So burnout was definitely my middle name. I was always in these cycles of burnouts and so on until I came back to Portugal, 2010. I, published those books of natural remedies, those guides. And then in 2015, it was again a burnout. It was a cycle. It was a burnout of everything. And I went to a coach. I had 10 sessions with a coach, and it was her that, in fact, told me to read the book of Dr. Elaine Aron's book, about high sensitive persons, because she said, after listening to me, I don't know how many sessions we were into, but she told, well, Sophia, I have this, and she was from Barcelona also, but she had the book in English, and she told me, I really think that you should read this book, because I think you're a highly sensitive person. And okay, so that thing was really like a turning point, because like I say to my clients, you don't need to do anything else. You just, read the information, see the information, listen to the information, and then your brain does what it does best, which is the deep processing. You just sit on the couch, and it's going to start to reframe automatically all your life in the light of this trait. And this is so important. So I came back, my mind came back to my birth. Not that I remembered, but I remembered that my mother always said, when you were born, nobody could sleep in that house during 3 months, because during 3 months you cried, and you would only sleep when you were, in somebody's arms. And as soon as we just thought about putting you in the
Down.
cradle, you would start to cry.
Mm.
That's where my mind went into, and I really thought, oh my God, this is amazing. I started to understand everything. I mean, a lot of things about my life, this sensitivity in school, although I'm really always excelled at school because I'm very diligent, I'm very curious, I always studied a lot. I hated school.
Yes, so did
It
I.
was so hard for me. Every beginning of the new year, I knew that I would have new teachers, new colleagues at school, and I couldn't adapt. And so my mother would listen to me crying for a whole week like a baby. Even when I was a teenager, it was so hard to go to school. I felt I didn't fit. It was overwhelming for me. I didn't even like, to this day, I don't like the smell of schools. I can't, I love to study, but for me, it was so hard the time at school that I don't know, my mind and my body created this defense that was so hard for me to fit in, really hard.
Yes, and I think that is something that most of us share. Most of us share. And it's in your case, it was good that you were still, let's say, performing well. Yeah. In my case, I just refused to work because I was so bored out of my head, and I just didn't feel I belonged there. So we all have another strategy to cope with this. I would love now to introduce your cards. So in 2013, you started using cards, I think, for yourself, if I understood that correctly, or incorporated also into your work. And then in 2023, you published a card deck, which I think is phenomenal. I really, really like it. And I leave it up to you now. For the viewers on YouTube, you could just briefly show us the deck, and then maybe for those that are, yes, thank you. For those that are just listening, maybe you could describe how many cards there are and what's the principle on which you organize those cards. What are they for?
Okay, first of all, Yole, thank you very much for this opportunity. And just to make it more clear, it was like this in 2010 when I started the natural health practitioner career. This gave me space to zoom out a little bit from such a logical thinking and analytical thinking. So much so that in 2013, I heard a little voice inside my head saying, Sophia, you need something to develop your intuition. You must stop being so rational. So back then, of course, because of my curiosity, I had already studied alchemy and history of religions and pendulum and crystals and, I don't know, astrology, everything. But the thing is, like all of these things for me, I didn't felt so much aligned with. And at this time, 2013, what called me, it was really cards, because it was so easy in a way, to help to develop the intuition. And in another way, it was systems that were already a little bit, studied. And I needed definitely this kind of more scientific background, let's say, that tells me, okay, this is okay. So Carl Jung had already studied, the power of the imagery to help us connect with our inner psyche and to help us, sometimes in our personal reflections and also in our directions and clarity, because some messages definitely emerge when we work with cards and connect with our intuition, and some things that were hidden before, they just start to come up. And that happened in 2013. I started to study tarot cards. I bought a lot of books of tarot cards for everything. And when the first meditation, which is one practice that you can do with cards, I did, for the persons that know the Rider Waite deck, I did it with the 10 of swords,
Mm-hmm.
which is a person lying on the ground with 10 swords on the back,
I know. Mm-hmm.
I did a meditation with this card, and it was the first meditation, and it was so powerful. So I just see myself into this card and so on. And suddenly, and I was 43 back then already. And I still didn't realize why I had these severe backaches when I was a teenager. And, and in my youth, that I had to go to the doctors and all of this, I couldn't stand up for long in the lab classes. And, so it was really very hard. And then a meditation with the card brought so much enlightenment. And I realized it was because of all the trauma and all the conflict that was around me at this time, all the tension that it was in my little body. And, my spine just started to curve up, all, started not to be in vertical, and tension here, tension there. And this gave rise to an immense pain that I find out in 43, the origin, because of a meditation with the card. And this was definitely a clear sign. This is a very deep, empowering practice, So fast forward 10 years after, 2023, I listened to the same voice telling me, okay, do your own cards. So it took me 2 years. So in fact, they weren't launched in 2023. In 2023, I heard the voice, but then it was a path of 2 years full of highs and lows and finding the right designer, the right person, how to bring these cards into life. Now, I believe that it wasn't, I was a part of the creation of the cards, but I think I didn't find the cards found me.
Mm-hmm.
The cards were there floating in the world of ideas, Plato world of ideas. And then suddenly they found the mind of Sophia that is very stubborn and determined. And that once one idea gets into my mind, I don't give up and I go. And so the cards maybe knew I was that person. And then along the way, they found the designer. So it was really a flow, an incredible flow that made it available that these cards could manifest. So this is a 52 cards deck called Sensitivity and Empathy Cards. They are available at Etsy shop in the Sensitivity Journey shop. And it's divided in groups, in 4 groups, which is one element per certain card. So we have certain cards of water that is connected with intuition and feelings, and certain cards of fire that is connected with the transformation, and then air, and then earth. And each card has a design, a fantasy, dreamlike design, but also they have a text already. They are bilingual, so they are in Portuguese and English, the text. And the text is an empowerment prompt. That's why I call these empowerment cards, because they are empowerment cards, and they are meant to be used to guide sensitive people, both highly sensitive people and empath, to connect better with their inner intuition, their inner voice, to start to make more aligned choices, to set boundaries easier, because all these cards have a prompt, and each prompt is connected both with a gift or a challenge of sensitive people. So it will help us, to ground more, to be able to set boundaries, self-compassion, all of these traits and these characteristics and these qualities that we need to invest in, to find our inner peace. I think that inner peace is definitely very, very important thing for us, to find our inner peace in such a loud world. So, and a way to develop, to find this silence, to be able to listen to your voice. So it's kind of a practice. So let's say that you develop very simple rituals of pulling a card every day. Mm-hmm. And you look at the picture, or you read the text in the card, or you go to the booklet which, by the way, in the booklet of the cards, you learn how to meditate with the cards, you learn how to make intuitive readings for yourself, you learn how to pull the cards. So it's for beginners and also for persons that are used to oracle cards, and both for personal use and professional use. So in the booklet of the cards, I also have a lot of suggestions for coaches and psychologists and therapists to use the cards as an empowerment tool with their clients, because we know that 30 to 50% of the persons that go to this kind of appointments, they are sensitive, so it's nice to use this kind of more intuitive and spiritual tools with these persons instead of just, staying in a very rigid framework protocol.
What I also really liked, Sophia, when you very kindly offered me a session so that I could, get to know how you work and, get to know the cards, was I had sort of expected or hoped that I would draw the cards, but you would tell me, because one of the questions was, what is my blog about, da, da, da. And what I really liked is that you turned it around and you asked me to use my own intuition. You did guide me, but at the same time, it wasn't you channeling something for me, but you reflected not the responsibility, but you invited me to use my own intuition rather than rely on somebody else. And I think that is the empowerment aspect you're also talking about. So even when people work with you, it's about listening to your own voice. You did guide me, you gave me, the positive, the challenge, and the invitation of the card. But your first question was, what is your feeling about this card? And then there was a part, the rebel, because I'm very much a rebel in me, said, oh no, I want Sophia to do this for me. It's like, and then later when we started working with the cards, I understood the deeper meaning of why you do the reading that way, why you invite, the person to develop that muscle.
That's why I call it intuitive readings. And sometimes the people think it's intuitive readings because she's going to do an intuitive reading. Well, of course, I use my intuition also, because especially, in the end and in the beginning, when we do the scan of the cards, people are not used to. I had to develop my own, framework to work with these cards, because they are different from tarot cards and other oracle cards. Mm-hmm. For instance, tarot cards have just images, pictures on it, and then coaching and psychologist cards, psychology cards usually just have text, and these cards have both. They have the image and have the text. So I had to develop my own protocol, my own framework, and also, but I'm all about empowerment, Jole. Is really like this, that I told you, it's about curiosity, learning, sharing, and then empowering people. Mm-hmm. And so what I want is like, okay, I can help you. I can guide you for sure. I mean, I do it since 2013 that I started to study and to read for myself. And then because friends wanted, do a reading for myself. And that's how it started. But what I want is people to be empowered, because knowledge is empowerment. Mm-hmm. We live in a society that we must have discernment. Discernment, I think it's a very important word nowadays. Mm-hmm. And it's the ability to distinguish things with our intelligence. And this we can only do if we are empowered persons. Yes. And like if we can connect with our intuition. And one of the things that we can do through the cards, because our intuition is the intelligence of the heart. Mm-hmm. Is our inner voice that passes just the logical and analytical mind. And we do have that thing. Highly sensitive persons, they are connected to the subtleties in the environments, and therefore we have a very high intuition. So why not use this tool, this amazing tool that we have? But at the beginning, we have to develop it, because we don't trust in it.
We don't trust it. That's why I said, you encourage people to build that muscle, because it, in a way, we are born with it, but at school, for example, you mentioned school, we forget because we are so much in this other trajectory of left brain expression and left brain learning, and our intuition just we don't foster it, we don't train it. Unfortunately, in other cultures, people like us are being sort of picked out and selected and taught how to use this muscle, how to build it, how to expand it, and see what our particular gift is. And in our society, that doesn't happen. And again, I think this is a huge loss for society, and it's a huge loss for the individual. And we talked about the book that I'm writing about the importance of highly sensitive people in resolving all the crises that we are in. And intuition and building and learning your own intuition and your empathy and your intelligence and your desire for complexity and your curiosity and your desire to support other people, all of that is hugely important in the time we're at right now. So in this context, I don't know, you always know my last question is always, what did I not ask you that you would like to share with our audience?
Well, I think that spirituality and self-compassion are other two very important tools for us as a sensitive people. Self-compassion because we must be extra kind to ourselves. We have a very high inner critic, and we are brought up in a society that is much faster than we are. So we tend to think that our rhythm is not right and there's something wrong with us. Like I always thought, oh, I'm very slow thinking. I must be stupid, because I take so much to process things when I learn. When I learn a new thing, I take a long, long time to process, but I know that at the end, at the other side, I'm going to excel at it because I'm very much tuned into detail, which other people aren't, So being kind to ourselves and also kind to the way we feel the world, because it's hardwired. Sometimes we don't want to feel this way. So if there is not a kindness and acceptance that this is the way I'm going to feel, because we are hardwired, we are born with this nervous system that is going to deprocess everything. So it's very hard that if we set a boundary and say no, that there isn't an uncomfortable thing inside of us. And why? Because our mirror neurons are very active and our insula is very active in our brains. So we are going to feel the discomfort of the other person. Mm-hmm. So it's completely natural that if I say no and I set a boundary, I can be assertive and train myself with all, these communication skills. But there's a part of me that probably is always going to feel a bit of guilt, and it's okay. It's okay. It's part of who we are and how we function and how we experience the world. So being kind to these parts of us that still feel guilty, that still feel unsafe, that still feel fear, I think it's very important because we open space that they express themselves. And so we see them and then we can release them. That's one thing that I think it's very important is kindness. And the other is spirituality in the sense of knowing that there's something that transcends us, that is bigger than us, that we are all interconnected. And this helps when we start to feel alone and weird, and it's only me, nobody understands me, and so on. So this spirituality is a very, very important tissue, that support tissue that helped me to go forward. When I have still this part of my mind, it's not me, but it's a part of my mind that is here still running in the implicit memory that tells me that I'm alone, I don't fit, nobody understands me. But if I have spirituality, I know that there's something bigger than myself. And I'm also connected with my inner voice through developing intuition and so on. Then I know I'm not alone. I belong. I'm perfect as I am, only that there is a program that I can correct in myself, but I'm already perfect. I'm good. I'm kind. I'm worthy. There's just this program that we can correct and rewire with kindness that will empower us and will empower us also to bring our word into the world, that it's like the importance of the book you are writing. The world needs that desperately, of
Yes.
sensitivity and compassion. So therefore it needs empowered, sensitive people.
Yes. Amen. Amen to that. For whoever wants to
Namaste.
find you, whoever wants to find you, I will put all the information in, in the notes for the show. But I also wanted to mention that you offer a bonus for those that buy your cards. But I will put all of that in the show notes for people to find. But I just wanted to mention it before we wrap this up. So thank
Okay.
you, Sophia. Thank you so much for sharing all your wisdom and the many facets that you brought to this show. Thank you very much for that.
I would like to finish, if you don't mind, with a poem because I like very much mindfulness poetry, so much so that I did the
Of
course
course.
in mindfulness poetry. And it's from the poet Hafiz.
Mm.
And it's called Rose or Spring. And it goes like this. How did the rose ever open its heart and give to this world all its beauty? It felt the encouragement of light against its being. Otherwise, we all remain too frightened. Namaste, and thank you for having me in your
Namaste,
beautiful podcast.
namaste. Thank you.